AM radio, an op-ed column, and Fox News is not enough. I want a center-right nation to fight for its soul, and its soul is represented in the arts. Its soul is represented in a world in which media is everything. AM radio is the lowest form of communication. It's tinny, it's not robust, it's not Avatar. I want Avatar. I want the right to enter the world of media to the extent and invest in media the way that the left does.
The fake media is trying to silence us, but we will not let them, because the people know the truth. The fake media tried to stop us from going to the White House, but I'm president and they're not.
You're listening to the Curt Schilling Podcast, a Breitbart.com podcast. The podcast starts now. Here's Curt with today's headlines.
Hey, welcome, guys, to the Curt Schilling Podcast. Well, it's the Curt Schilling and Sparkles podcast today as Shonda joins me. Lots to get to today. Dr. Seb Gorka, then Sonnie Johnson. But I want to get right into it. We're watching the dementia of the left, and you said something yesterday. You came home and said that you had been listening to the news for a brief period of time, and it's off the rails, the things that they're doing and saying.
What it comes down to is which channel do you listen to, because that's what you wholeheartedly believe. No one's doing their own.
Right.
Sitting back and making
news.
Their own opinion.
There's no news being reported. It's if you're on CNN, Trump and Russia colluded for 2 years, even though no evidence to show it. Or if you're on Fox, it's Trump is perfect. There is no middle ground. There is no, and just to prove that point. So we were watching as a family. I thought it was actually pretty cool.
Well,
the other
that's
night.
what I was going to say too. Whether you're for or against, that's one lesson that the kids don't walk away from in school anymore, is the knowledge of what the Supreme Court is.
Right.
And to be able, they made fun of him for doing it in prime time, but it did allow people to sit around the TV and talk about it. And now, the kids are asking questions and doing their own research when they walk away, but they know what the Supreme Court is, how many judges are on it, what it means.
Well, I thought it was pretty cool that our middle son, who is very liberal-leaning socially, was kind of put off by everybody getting so upset about the appointment when clearly the guy is qualified. I mean, I think he's starting to see the irrational side rear its ugly head from the left.
But I also think that the conversation's going to come with him where you say, what is it about being a liberal that you identify with?
Well, you remember during the election, he was freaking out about Trump taking away gay rights and all this other stuff.
That's what I'm saying.
And here we are 2 years later. It never happened. And so when you ask him, he's smart enough to realize, a lot of things that they told me was going to happen never happened.
Right, but they're still selling that agenda.
Oh, no, I know.
But
he's smart enough to see past it.
But what I will say is when Garrison went to get his driver's permit yesterday, and Garrick was joking about him, oh, buddy, you got 2 more years till you can vote. And Garrison said, well, if people who are non-citizens can vote, I'm sure I can find a way to vote, too.
Yeah.
And I thought he's pretty educated at 16 years old. I'd like him to vote rather than someone who's not
He's
done
more
anything
informed
inside.
than actually some people I've seen. Well, he's much more informed than college students we've seen these sound bites from.
But why is that fair? That you have
no,
to
you're
be
exactly
18
right.
to vote.
Well, but see, here's the thing. All 16-year-olds are not created equal. Right? I wasn't mature enough to vote at 16. I had no idea. Garrison knows more about the potential candidates for the Democratic Party's nomination for president than probably some of the Democrats do. This House has become very politicized, and not in a bad way. It's just a topic of conversation, much more so than it was in my house. I don't know how it was for you growing up.
No, we talked about it.
I was going to say, because your parents both worked for the government, and they got to see the inside from the inside out. But it's all coming to a head in this Kavanaugh nomination. I want you to listen to the irrational responses and some of the comments. Alan Dershowitz, lawyer Alan Dershowitz, you remember him from the OJ trial, was on The View. And I want you to listen, and she says something more and more stupid every day. Joy Behar was talking to him about the appointment, and he had this to say.
I wouldn't have nominated Kavanaugh. It wouldn't have been my choice. Why? I'm a liberal Democrat. I would love to see Akhil Amar, the guy who wrote the piece in the New York Times today, a professor at Yale. He would have been great. I can give you a list of 100 people. But the Republicans I think they won. They lost the popular vote, but they won the electoral vote. So, and they stole the first nomination to the Supreme Court. Absolute theft, unconstitutional. And I have to tell you, I'm a little critical of President Obama, for whom I voted. He should have nominated Merrick Garland and should have sworn him in and should have dared the Republicans to say, kick him out of office.
We agree with that.
Because they have no right not to decide a case. The Constitution says advice and consent. It doesn't say delay and postpone.
Well, then how come Mitch McConnell's not in jail? That's what I want to know.
Well, you want to put everybody in jail. I know. Look, I'm against putting people in jail unless they've actually committed crimes. I know that's a radical position.
Maybe you should have sat by someone else.
But look, Kavanaugh may be on that list. He may be the best. Democrats will say least worst. He is a more traditional conservative. I think he believes in precedent. I think he will apply the law. I remember he was a Justice Kennedy law clerk. He was, you know, he graduated Yale Law School, taught at Harvard. Nothing wrong with that. That's what I did. So I want to hear the questions. I want to hear the answers. But I'm not going to go along with Liz Warren, my friend and colleague, who says we're going to oppose everybody. That would, you know, I hate the way justices get confirmed these days. It's so political. I wish we could go back to the days when justices got confirmed 99-1.
Well, and you know what I want to say off of the past week? I loved to listen to him when he was unbiased and gave his professional opinion. But then you get this piece that comes out last week where he's been shunned in his Nantucket little whatever, the vineyard. And then all of a sudden he has a strong left opinion
he's been
he's going to go on the circuit about.
But you heard he was laughing a little bit, but he wasn't kidding. Joy Behar wants to see McConnell in jail because, and it has nothing to do with committing crimes. They just want people that don't agree with them to suffer.
You couldn't sit down with her and get her to give you an honest answer, an educated answer. She doesn't have one.
Well, she's not educated. That's the problem.
She has the same, you know, put him in jail. Yeah. He's a racist. Like, it's the same thing. Give me something else and make me listen to you.
Which I don't mind from idiots out of Hollywood because they tend to be pretty consistent in their stupidity. But when it starts leaking into the government and you hear guys like, listen to what Chuck Schumer said. And this is, honest to God, as we go through these next couple sound bites, I want you to remember this. The Russia investigation into collusion has found exactly nothing. Nothing, not 1 ounce of evidence that ties President Trump to anything illegal in any possible way. And on the flip side of the Russia investigation, we now know for a fact that the DNC colluded with the DOJ and the FBI and the Clinton campaign, Fusion GPS and Richard Steele, to create opposition research that was known to be a lie against a democratically elected president. And that is the definition of treason. But listen to what Chuck Schumer has to say about the nominated justice.
Senator McConnell told the president that there were other nominees who could have been confirmed more easily. Why did the president stick with Kavanaugh? Because he's worried that Mr. Mueller will go to the court and ask that the president be subpoenaed and ask to do other things necessary to move the investigation forward. And President Trump knows that Kavanaugh will be a barrier to preventing that investigation from going there.
President knows that he will be a barrier, but also the facts are going to be a barrier because they have nothing.
I mean, it's just the same narrative they keep trying to push. And guess what? They're going to be doing it for 6 more years. So hopefully people get tired of hearing it.
Then you get rational reason and well-thought-out responses. The left's continued assault on the females, on the women in the Trump administration and the women working for the Trump administration and the women supporting the Trump administration destroys any ounce of credibility any of them have fighting for women's rights. They're full of shit. They don't fight for women's rights anywhere. If they were, they'd be over in the Middle East. But listen to Kellyanne Conway on Fox News the other night.
Well, if these Democrats, whether they're in red states, blue states, or purple states, actually look at the qualifications of Judge Brett Kavanaugh, they really have no choice but to confirm him. If it's based on pure politics, then some will do what they usually do, hold up their stop sign, scream, resist, obstruct, stop, fight to the death to stop him. But if they're being honest, and it's a matter of policy and principle and personal qualifications, that just the professional and personal pedigree of this man and his time on the bench already, then if they're being honest and they're doing what they promised their voters they would do, which is to make sure that the judiciary is filled with folks who are faithful to the Constitution and won't make up the law as they go along. That's really all the president asks, and I think whether you're a red state Democrat, a purple state Democrat, you're in cycle, you're not in cycle this time, if you're honest about the process, you will give this man his due and eventually a thumbs-up vote. Now, everybody should be concerned. Every voter out there who's represented by a senator who said that they would vote against the president's nominee to the United States Supreme Court before they even heard the name, that's troubling. That's problematic. That is not the way a democracy and federalism is meant to work. The Senate advises and consents, and then the Senate votes to confirm or deny a president's nominations to the judiciary so that all three branches are duly involved. They're not doing their jobs if they're telling you from the beginning, I will vote against a Trump nominee to the United States Supreme Court.
Let me remind you, you're going to hear it coming up with Dr. Gorka. There was a press release issued by several parties on the left that put out press releases in opposition of the Trump SCOTUS pick. And where the name was in the press release, such as, we think that Brett Kavanaugh's a horrible justice, blah, 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 where Brett Kavanaugh's name was supposed to be was XXX. They created these press releases before the candidate because they were going to release the press release no matter who the candidate was. If you're living in one of those states where the Democrats are up in a red state that Trump took, you've got somebody who you're going to find out really politically what they're made of. These next two pieces, I got to tell you, Jake Tapper, Jim Acosta, I can't think of many more people than this guy who have given up all credibility they've ever had. Joe Scarborough has been a complete show. He's a joke. But I want you to listen to what he says Brett Kavanaugh brings to the table. This is the left's, and I'm using air quotes, news. This is the left, what it believes is actual news. Listen to this.
In a 2009 article in the Minnesota Law Review, Kavanaugh suggested that presidents be exempt from criminal investigations and civil suits while in office. He wrote that Congress should consider passing a law, quote, exempting a president while in office from criminal prosecution and investigation, including from questioning by criminal prosecutors or defense counsel. Kavanaugh went on to write, quote, we should not burden a sitting president with civil suits, criminal investigations, or criminal prosecutions. The president's job is difficult enough as it is.
Okay, so let's be really clear here. Judge Kavanaugh, if he's going to be a scourge of liberals need to get it right. Judge Kavanaugh wrote that law review article in 2009 at the dawn of the Obama administration. So it would be the least self-serving thing for a conservative jurist to write, which I think actually speaks. Given the hysteria surrounding Barack Obama's presidency, I actually think for a conservative jurist to write that actually speaks to the content of the judge's character.
But he wrote it. You heard what he said. He wrote that referring to President Obama.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
In 2009. That is a very valuable piece of information that you choose not to report on.
Right.
And you will run into 100 liberals who will recite that and have no idea there was another part to it.
Right. No, it's
and that's a big part of it.
Well, it's a powerful thing. This guy is absolutely what you want as a justice in many, many ways. The Constitution was written 240 some years ago, and the Supreme Court's job since then has been to make sure that that document maintains the power it had when it was first written. It's been amended, as it should have been, to fix the things that were wrong, that we were so grossly in error, from slavery to equal rights and all the things that have. But as it sits now, it's pretty much a perfect document. I mean, it's the piece of paper that separates us from the rest of the world. Right. In a good way. And it makes this the most open, loving, inviting, accepting, caring country in the world. Finally, when you think about the Manchurian Candidate and the full-blown idiocy of the left, nothing sums up the left better than this next soundbite from MSNBC. Listen to this from All In on MSNBC.
Does Russia have some kind of leverage over Donald Trump? In a new cover story from New York Magazine, writer Jonathan Chait argues we have not allowed ourselves to consider the full range of possibilities. Chait lays out what could be considered the worst-case scenario for Trump-Russia collusion, that Donald Trump has been a Russian intelligence asset since 1987. New York Magazine's Jonathan Chait joins me now. So, okay, it sounds insane. I just want to say, it really does. Like, the idea that he goes to Moscow in 87, is cultivated as a Russian intelligence asset, and is this sort of like sleeper cell for decades sounds nuts. It sounds like the stuff of conspiracy theories. Why are you not insane?
So that's a great question, Chris. I get that all the time. So first of all, the piece acknowledges that that is probably not true, but it might be. And one of the reasons I wrote this is you need to take seriously some of these low probability, high impact scenarios. You know, before the election, sort of everyone heard that Hillary Clinton had about an 80% chance of winning, and we all just treated it like that meant 100% and didn't think about what would that 20% alternative really mean. So that's part of what I'm doing with this, with aspects of this piece, like this trip to Moscow. You know, what would it mean if it really went that deep? Now, there's a lot of ways in which this scandal could be really bad and not go that deep. But I think you need to consider that for another reason, which is that everyone always says, well, this has been Trump's view forever. All this stuff he's saying about the Western allies splitting us apart from the West and how he's sort of pissing on them all the time and saying, you know, we should let them go their own way. That's just what he's always thought. It's not really what he's always thought. It's what he's thought since 1987. He never thought that before then, or at least he never said it before then. And in 1987 is when he went to Moscow, and he's feted by the Russians and tours Moscow. And then he comes back. Then he starts talking about running for president for the first time. And then he starts talking for the first time about how our allies are a bunch of freeloaders and we should kick them to the curb.
So basically, that whole piece was him saying that there could be some truth to Trump being a Russian agent.
I know.
Okay.
I know.
This is the same group of people. I think you've heard me mention the group Q, right? And they're revealing things and exposing things almost weeks ahead. So it literally, in my mind, could be the president. But the fact of the matter is, the left is calling that the most insane conspiracy theory ever, and this isn't. President Trump's been a Russian agent since 1987, and hey, you just have to consider the possibility. No, you don't.
It's like that 80-20.
That's exactly right. It's embarrassing, but it's who they are. It's what they are. It's where they become. Guys, we're gonna take a break here in just a second. After the break, Dr. Sebastian Gorka, his new book available for pre-order, Why We Fight, at Seb Gorka on Twitter. His New York Times bestseller, Defeating Jihad, is also available on Amazon.com. Back with Seb in just a minute.
Breitbart News Daily with Alex Marlow.
Censorship is a key issue here, particularly for people on the right. Do you think it was addressed adequately?
Definitely not. It was useful to name check Diamond and Silk. It was useful to check even politicians who had campaign ads that were shut down. But in every case, Zuckerberg was allowed to essentially dismiss the case and move on.
Breitbart News Daily, weekdays at 6 a.m. Eastern on SiriusXM Patriot 125.
You're listening to the Curt Schilling Podcast. Once again, here's Curt Schilling.
Hey, welcome back, guys. Joining me now, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. He's a Fox News strategist, national security strategist. He was a former strategist to President Trump at probably, to me, the most crucial time in his presidency. He's also the author of the New York Times bestseller, which you can find at Amazon.com, Defeating Jihad. Dr. Sebastian Gorka. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Curt. Thanks for having me.
You are absolutely swamped busy. Every time I turn on Fox, you're giving somebody an opinion, and everybody's asking for your opinion, which I think is a good thing. I wanted to ask you about this whole – it's all coming to a head, it feels like, from the Kavanaugh appointment to tariffs and trade to the border to the midterms. I'm watching the left react, and they're reacting as – to me, someone with schizophrenia would react, and I don't mean to be funny, but the fact of the matter is they don't know who they are. They don't know what they want. All they know is they don't want what we want, and that's not a platform to run on, nor is it a stance to take. But I feel like we're getting to a point where the rubber's going to meet the road, and the only thing they're going to be left with is actual violence.
Yeah, it's very disturbing. The developments of the last few months, especially the last few weeks, really make you wonder what options the Democrat Party has left. It's like, you know, those little wheels that you have in those pet cages where the mouse is running around and round and round in the little wheel. They've lost all sense of reality. You know, we are more than 2 years into this Trump reality, and they just deny it. And they're not facing the facts of what's happened with the economy, with national security, all the great news under the Trump presidency. And instead, they're actually doubling down. You look at the language of the Maxine Waters, you look at this insane concept where you're actually having political figures say that ICE, which is the equivalent of our border police, that ICE should be dissolved. it's a bubble. It's a fantasy land. And we've had this before. Remember, this has been brewing for decades. But in the past, we always had amongst the DNC leadership some pragmatists who had influence. I'm not a fan of Bill Clinton's, but Bill Clinton was a pragmatist, and he wouldn't allow the ideological radicals to take control of the agenda. And now that's what seems to be happening. When you have this woman, Cortez, who won the primary in New York, when you have a woman who wins that, who actually goes on a national television program and talks about the DHS black sites at the border, and she actually thinks she's talking about reality, then the Democrats, it's just very, very disturbing. And you talk about schizophrenia, you know, it is reaching the level of a psychological disorder.
I mean, people call, you know, the Trump hating a disorder, liberalism a disorder, but it really is across the line. And we've started to see the Maxine Waters comments, and I think I'm very much like you, Dr. Gorka. I always hold the adult accountable for the decisions they make. You know, the red hen thing with Sarah Huckabee Sanders, you know what? That's a private business. They're free to do what they want. They're free. They're also free to suffer the repercussions of their decisions. But when you fast forward off of that and you go to Annapolis, Maryland, and a gentleman who's had a 10-year beef with a magazine, a newspaper, through lawsuits and all these other things, walks in the building and murders people. And the first thing that the politicians on the left do, and the Hollywood actors and actresses on the left do, is blame President Trump. The word irrational, I don't think, does justice to what the left is doing when it comes to reacting to these events. And it's spilling out into, I mean, they're dying for this North Korea negotiation to fail epically. They're dying for Trump to get his ass handed to him in Europe during this trip to meet the NATO allies. And they're openly and actively rooting against the success of the country that's given them everything they've gotten. And nobody's calling them on it because the media is complicit.
Yeah, I mean, look at what's happening today in Brussels. This is a perfect case study. We've had 2 years of this insanity of the Russian collusion, delusion, and that the president is a puppet of Vladimir Putin. And what's the reality? What's the first thing he does? He sits down and he says to Germany, he says, guys, you are in bed with Russia. You're about to okay a pipeline that provides you with 70% of your natural gas and doesn't give it to any other any other allies, undermines NATO. And he says, you are controlled by Moscow. You've got to wake up. Now, that's what he's actually doing. Will the left suddenly say, oh, well, I guess he's not some Manchurian candidate for the Kremlin? No, they'll double down. And with regards to your prior point, the thing that's most disturbing is, yeah, you can kick somebody out of your restaurant, but that's not the issue. When you follow that person's family across the road and then harass them in another restaurant that you don't own, that's un-American. We don't do that.
Yes.
And you have to look at the last 2 years. How many liberals, how many just regular Democrat voters would know who you were talking about if you said, hey, who's James Hodgkinson? I guarantee you 9 out of 10 would have absolutely no idea who you're talking about. And then you have to remind them that a couple of miles from where I'm standing right now, Curt, there's a baseball diamond. And a year ago, a left-wing activist, a Bernie Sanders supporter, went with a semi-automatic rifle and a handgun and a hit list of Republican congressmen to assassinate them all at the congressional baseball game. And he almost succeeded. If it weren't for those 2 brave Capitol Police officers, Stephen Scalise wouldn't just be injured, he'd be dead, as would most of the other congressmen at the field. And there's only one side that's normalized violence, and it's the left. There is no equivalent of Antifa on the right, and that's what is most disturbing.
I got to tell you, our answer to Antifa is, first of all, we don't do what they do, but secondly, it's the NRA. The NRA is a group of law-abiding American citizens. That's our movement. That's our cause. You've got the most law-abiding citizens.
The founding of the NRA, let's just make some liberal heads explode, was in large part connected with having black Americans have access to their Second Amendment rights to protect themselves from the Democrat KKK lynch mob. That's the history of the NRA. But I don't expect, Anderson Cooper or the Washington Post to tell you about that.
That's exactly right. The intent behind the beginning of the NRA to help and support black Americans to defend their own lives from a democratically run, created, and fostered KKK is a story that's been buried, much like a lot of the Democratic history, and they've managed to pull the wool over a generation or more's eyes with this whole switch of parties, which never happened as well.
Right.
I want to touch real quick, Dr. Gorka, the Kavanaugh appointment to the Supreme Court, which, by the way, I wanted Amy Barrett, but I'll settle for this gentleman because I think all of his decisions that I have read align with the promises President Trump made during the campaign, once again, that he's keeping, which is to appoint constitutional law-abiding judges, and this is just another example. This guy's credentials are impeccable, yet you heard the left talking about as if he'd appointed Joseph Goebbels to the Supreme Court.
I mean, absolute insanity. And the fact that the Women's March released their press release excoriating the president's choice, but they left in the fact, the piece had been written before they knew who it was, and the XXX of who the pick was left in the final press release. Tells you everything you need to know. Amy would have been great, but don't worry. He's the master of the deal. 50% of it is timing. When Ruth Bader Ginsburg leaves the court, which she will, then Amy's going to be up. Kavanaugh's the right pick. And he's the right pick. Why? When the DNC, within minutes of the president's announcement, says this man must be kept as far away from the Supreme Court as possible, he's the right choice. When Chuck Schumer says he will use every weapon in his arsenal to prevent that nomination becoming a confirmed position on the court, Kavanaugh's the man for the job.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm expecting Jim Jordan-like tactics in this one because the left has proven that they will go to any length or depth, regardless of the truth associated with that length or depth, to defeat things that they don't like. And I don't have any doubt that that's where they're going to try and go with this one as well. Dr. Gorka, listen, it's always a pleasure. The book is called Defeating Jihad. You guys can find it on Amazon.com. One of the many contributions that you've continued to make. Keep your head down, stay safe. God bless you, and hopefully we can catch up again soon.
And look out, my new book is already available for pre-order. So Defeating Jihad was the New York Times bestseller, but Why We Fight is out soon, but also available on Amazon. Thanks, Curt, and follow me at
Thank you, Doc.
Gorka on Twitter.
Breitbart News Tonight with Joel Pollack and Rebecca Mansour.
I said that it's the epitome of hypocrisy. Unless you fall in line with their liberal agenda, this uniparty, globalist, liberal agenda, they will never support you. They use the whole gender issue, of course, as some kind of tool to prop up their messaging, but it's the phoniest thing.
Sirius XM Patriot Channel 125. We want to hear from you. Tweet the show at Garrick38. Once again, here's Curt Schilling.
Welcome back, guys. Joining me now is the host of Sonny's Corner on Sirius XM Patriot 125, Saturday from 1 to 3. And I honest to God, I can't urge you guys enough to listen to this woman speak. She is informed. She is passionate. She is someone that is definitely not a yes lady when it comes to me, because we argue about a lot of things, and I love it that she does it from an informed perspective. She also is the author of the Did She Say That podcast, which is out weekly on Wednesdays on Breitbart.com. She is the one and only Sonnie Johnson. Good morning, darling. How are you?
Blessed and highly favored. How are you?
Likewise. Shonda and I are sitting here, and
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Well, I've been watching this walk away movement, and I feel like it's something that you've been saying for the past year since I've been talking with you. Have you watched that movement? It's everything that you've been trying to explain.
It is. I don't think it's manifesting itself in the black community the way it is being sold to you guys. I think that they have pulled, I guess, I don't want to seem against it because I'm not. The more people we get to wake up to this, I'm grateful for that. But I don't think it's happening the way that it could happen coming from the black community because of the way it's happening. And let me explain it like this. When I first started, when I first realized I was a Republican, conservative, whatever you want to call it, the number one question you get asked is why. So every single interview you do, every conversation you have, every person who comes up to meet you, they want you to answer the question why. Why are you a Republican? Why did you leave the Democrat plantation? You get what I'm saying? Every conversation starts with the why. And so if you think about it in terms of a normal interview maybe 7 to 10 minutes long. At every interview, you have to spend 5 to 6 minutes explaining the why instead of getting to a solution or having an actual conversation. So what I would say is they are in a honeymoon period right now where everybody is in love with this switch that they've made because they're calling them brave and they're calling them smart and they're, you know what I'm saying, they're building them up. But eventually that wears thin. And when you actually come to start talking about problems that actually need to be solved, that's when you meet the real Republican Party. You know, that's when you meet the real conservative movement. So what I am trying to say to that apparatus that is already in place, are you ready for an influx if it actually happens? Like, have you prepared yourself? You have the same talking points. You have the same setup. You have the same old talking heads. Like, are you even ready for this influx of these people that you call free thinkers? Or will your process be to beat them into submission and turn them into sheep instead of actual thinkers? And people who understand what conservatism means, why we stand for it, why we remember our history, why we like free markets and capitalism. Like, there are some real legitimate reasons why we are conservative. And I don't think it's too much to ask that those things also be mentioned in this conversation. So when these people come over, it's not a temporary thing. It is a generational switch.
Well, I think that some of the talking points that they're using, they promised that they would take care of me, that I was told from the beginning that this is what the party that I needed to be a part of. This is the party that would take care of me. And that they're seeing now that this is the party that turns on them. And it is a large amount of people from the gay community, from border community. I do agree with you that that it probably hasn't affected the African American community. What they're finding is that they are accepted, that this lie that they've been fed, which is the foundation of what you've been saying, the lie that they've been fed for years and years, and now we need to educate them on how to change that lie.
And that's the thing. It's not so much a matter of education as pointing out what they already know to be true. So most of the people that are waking up, they probably balance their checkbook on a regular. They probably, you know what I'm saying? Like, they have probably mastered the basics of what it means to be a conservative, having a budget, having to stay within it. Like, they have probably got those things kind of mastered at this point. Letting them know that that's what it means. Like, that is what we're talking about. Understanding what fiscal responsibility means for you, yourself as an individual, but also how that translates into making government work for us, not against us or abusive to us. So, like, it is legitimate things that we don't necessarily have to start from scratch in teaching them all of these things. But we do need to start pointing out how the success you have garnered in your life, look what it took you to get there. Look at the path. Look at the sacrifices you made. Look at the dedication that you gave. That in and of itself is the formations and the building blocks for what conservatism means. And then we can start branching out into the politics of it all, the Second Amendment of it all, the pro-life of it all. But we have to be able to start these people with a solid foundation that we aren't changing everything about them. They aren't like this thing. It makes them say, okay, I'm just going to walk away from my family. No. A very big part of conservatism is your family unit. Yeah, we as conservatives cannot be encouraging people to walk away from their family because of politics. That is insane to me. Like, how are you going to heal anything when the first thing you do as a part of the movement is break your family? That is not conducive to what we're trying to do here. We need solid, strong, constructive families, not more broken families. So I'm just saying that there are some things, some basics of conservatism that are not being put out there and offered as a part of this movement. And I think that it's going to be a shock to both the people that are coming over and to the apparatus that is already there when these two things collide.
I think tolerance has been the biggest motivator in most of these people switching over. It's the
lack of tolerance from the left and the acceptance from the right. Absolutely.
Yes, but I do understand, and it does make sense, that these are people who are making a living and realizing that they're writing checks to people that they're making promises to that'll never change. You know, that the government is making promises to these people that will never change. And we do need to get in to these other communities and teach them how to take care of themselves first.
That's what I'm saying. That's not the truth. Let me give you an example. Okay, so for the last about 3 or 4 years, rapper T.I. has been buying property up down in Atlanta. Now, I noticed the stories when it come up. Every time I would see one, rapper T.I. buys another building. And I would be like, he is accumulating property. I wonder what he's going to do with this property. Well, he's just announced that along with Killer Mike, another rapper down in Atlanta, they are starting development on these properties, including one that is a supermarket, because the area has no place where you could even buy fresh produce. So one of the first things that they want to do is to put a supermarket there. And one of the second things that they're doing is creating affordable living space so that the people who currently live there can afford to stay there once the area starts to build up. So the people who are actually love their communities, that are actually a part and fabric of the communities, they don't lose that while they're building it up. That's the answer for gentrification. T.I. is not asking the federal government to come in and do anything. They're not protesting and begging and burning anything down. They bought it the legal way. They're developing it the legal way, and they're going to revitalize their communities, the desolate areas that they grew up in themselves. What is it that you have to teach them outside of that? So that's what you don't have to teach them. All we have to do, and it comes back to this idea of tolerance. T.I. would not be tolerated on the right because he does have a past. He did come up the hard way. He's a felon. But look what he did once his light bulb went off. Once he realized that was a dead-end path, look what he did. Look where he is now. And that in and of itself still does not make him acceptable to the right.
I don't know.
While we're talking about Sonnie, intolerance, that's the intolerance that is stopping this movement.
I can't disagree with you more right there. Why on earth would you think the right would not accept a man, regardless of his background, who's made himself successful?
I will go back to the article that was written by Ben Shapiro back in 2009, and it is called Rap is Crap. This was written in 2009. And at the end of that article, Ben Shapiro makes the prediction that when T.I. got out of jail, that he would no doubt go back to the street and being a thug and a criminal and teach other people how to shoot. That's not what he did. But that is the perception of what the right has about these people. And how I know that they wouldn't be accepted is that I have used them as my reference point for trying to sell conservatism to the right for nearly 6 years. And I have been told every way possible that they are nothing but thugs, they are nothing but this, they are only reflections of what they have done in their past. There is no room to accept what they have become today. And I have been told it for 6 years. That's why I believe what I believe.
Well, I mean, listen, you have personal experience, but I got to tell you, as a conservative myself and the people I know, I mean, I look at that and see that as an example of what you can do in this country. It doesn't matter what you've done or who you are. You can move forward if you choose to move forward.
That is my question to the conservative movement, is why is his story any different? Why is his story any different?
It's not.
But the only difference they have is hip hop. They're thugs. With this image that has been painted of black people is very strong on the right. And they don't let go of it to actually see the person and see their accomplishments and judge them accordingly. And that is my ultimate question. Why? Why is that an impossibility?
But do you think, we have 4 kids, they all listen to hip hop. We don't have to like the music, but there's a whole generation that are following and making them into that. Can that not evolve into something where they are accepted?
Right now, people like T.I. are not celebrated in hip hop at the moment. See, when
not celebrated by his own?
Yes, by hip hop, listen, this is why. When he was rapping about drugs and crime and the hood life, he was winning Grammy. When he started rapping about reinvesting in the community and getting ourselves out and building for ourselves, his Grammy stopped. His recognition stopped.
But is that really?
He was no longer towing the line. Progressives control.
But that's his own. But don't you think that's his own community that's doing that?
That's not the right.
No, exactly. Exactly. So what I am telling the right is, there is your black community. Right. They're not being celebrated by the left. They are being ostracized by the left. They are being let go of by the left because they are capitalists, because they believe in being fathers to their children and being the head of their households. They believe in being men and being dominant and superior in their fields. They believe in the American dream and have worked very hard to achieve it. No, the left is not going to spotlight them. The left is not going to give them a space. Why won't we do it on the right? There is your army.
Right. No.
It's right there for the taking.
Right. No, I understand what you're saying. I don't think it's as much that he's not accepted by the right as he's not celebrated, and he should be. And the story should be.
Real quick, does he have a political affiliation, Sonnie?
No, he doesn't. And his political philosophy is waiting on the government to solve our problems is not going to get anywhere. The way we're going to fix this, the way we're going to change this, is that you yourself as an individual have to get out, and then you have to reach back down, and you have to pull somebody else out. That is how we're going to change this. That is his philosophy, and I don't understand why the right can't get behind that.
I don't know that it's not getting behind it. I just think I don't agree with not getting behind it. I think the problem is that that should be something they should be shining a bright light on. That should be
they won't.
Right.
And they don't.
Right.
And they had the perfect opportunity with Kanye. Why do you think I got so mad with Kanye? Like, this is perfect opportunity. This is Kanye. This is entrepreneur. This is Brad. This is your black Donald Trump. Are you kidding me? about this stupid conversation you're having instead of actually pointing out how entrepreneurial he is, how these tax cuts are going to affect him monumentally in his ability to rebrand himself and create the business that he actually wanted from the beginning. Like, this was your story. This was your time to sell capitalism in a palatable fashion by one of its icons. But instead of taking the time to explain it, we exploited it. And we got nothing from it but a momentary bounce. And it was, and I told you then, it was a missed opportunity. And I'm telling you now, the Army is there. They like the tax cuts. They enjoy the deregulation. They are going to make money off of it. They are going to be the next generation of movers and shakers. They're going to do it with or without the conservative movement. So the faster the conservative movement just goes ahead and says, hey, let's look at this capitalism and be happy about it, the quicker we're going to get past all of these stupid hurdles and ridiculous distractions that keep us from evolving as a country. And it's really that simple.
Sonnie, thank you. Always a pleasure to catch up. Now you've got me. I'm going to have to do some more work this week and do some research. Sonnie Johnson, did she say that? Out on Wednesdays, host of Sonnie's Corner from 1 to 3 on Sirius XM Patriot 125. Saturdays, closing out winners and losers. I'm going to let you do it today. Give me a winner this week, somebody that you feel made a
big difference. Trump doing his live announcement was a great conversation to have with families to help them understand and learn a little bit more about the government. Loser is this movement of being offended by everything. And I want to start off by saying that I don't know if you know the girl from Massachusetts that was in the beauty pageant and resigned because of a joke made during the pageant, which was I guess the winner had come out and said, oh, I don't know why we aren't wearing bathing. It's a shame we're not wearing bathing suits in the contest anymore. And the other one said, me too. And she was so offended by it that she resigned. And, you know, I understand that she was raped and it's very personal to her, but she missed an opportunity. And I think that it goes back to reacting instead of looking at that moment and seeing what we can do better. You know, her resigning, they won't remember her name tomorrow. And I mean, it's a very serious topic, but everybody seems to be offended by everything.
I'm going to close out today by wishing and sending my condolences to Megan Brainard, the owner of Jaja, who won the world's ugliest dog. Jaja passed away in her sleep last night at the age of 9. Dennis Miller on the Tomorrow Show. Guys, have a great day. God bless. We'll catch up with you.
I want to actually take a couple of the references to Donald Trump from hip-hop. And then we're going to try to see if we can figure out why they like Donald Trump. Jay-Z said, I'm at the Trump International. Ask for me. Raekwon said, I'm the black Trump. They are comparing themselves to what he represents. His wealth, his achievement. Capitalism.
Sonnie's Corner with Sonnie Johnson. Saturday from 1 to 3 p.m. East on Sirius XM Patriot 125.